I'm very excited to be here with you today, and I want to just express how grateful I am that you have devoted a little bit of time to be with me and talk about this topic that I think is really interesting and timely for today. So I wish that I could be there in person with you and that we could have face-to-face discussions, but this is the next best thing. So I'm grateful that we can do this. So let me see if I can start changing my presentation. There we go. So I'd like to start the presentation by acknowledging this fact. One of the biggest challenges that we have in ELT is to balance teaching English, teaching the language, with other things that we teach our students to be successful in the classroom. ELT is, I think, a fascinating place. There's a lot going on. The subject area itself of teaching English as a foreign language, or in some cases a second language, has, a lot going on already with the systems, with the skills that we teach, and then with all of the different strands that we add on, because we are in this in the classroom, and we take advantage to bring in all these different things, whether it is that we're expanding subject areas through CLIL, or expanding our students' knowledge of academic English, or whether we're supporting them with developing critical thinking skills, any number of things that we have the opportunity to bring into our classroom because it's an ELT classroom, and we're aware of all of these things. I think it makes it a very exciting place to be and a very rich landscape. But of course, it would be natural to wonder, how can we fit something more in? And what is global citizenship education exactly? How do we bring it in to the ELT classroom and not just feel like it's one more thing? So I'd like to make the case that global citizenship education actually can bring together lots of these skills and areas of development, but also add something more profound, something that adds wider purpose for everybody involved, for students and for teachers and for communities and families. So I think that global citizenship, you'll find throughout this presentation, I hope that you'll find that it supports students in feeling like they contribute positively to the world. So I am noticing that I'm a little distracted with the people walking by, so I'm going to tilt you a bit that way. There we go. So what is global citizenship exactly? And aren't we all global citizens, right? You might be asking yourself this question. The first time that the expression was recorded was 300 years BC by a Greek philosopher called Diogenes. And when he was asked if he was from Athens or where he felt connected to, he actually replied, "I'm a citizen of the world." And at the time, it was a very radical idea, and it was a way to distance himself from the politics of Athens. But actually, if we look at today, it's not a radical idea at all. It's a pretty common idea, and it's gained a lot of traction. On screen, you will see that Global Scan did a poll for the BBC in 2016, and they found that more people, 51% of people polled, considered themselves more as a global citizen than a citizen of their own country. Now, if you think about that, more people felt that they are global citizens than their country. If we changed that question and said, how many people feel like they are global citizens as well as citizens of their country, I have a feeling that number would skyrocket. So I'd like to pose you my first question. During this webinar, I'll ask you once in a while some questions, and I'd like to hear from you in the chat. Think about how your life is touched by being a global citizen. What are elements of global citizenship in your life? And put them in the chat box. Think of yourself and your day-to-day. What are things that maybe make you a global citizen? And it can be anything. There are no wrong answers. I see some people typing already. I've asked this question in a number of forums, and I'm going to share with you what other people have said. But they say all kinds of things. The capacity we have to connect with anyone around the world. Yes, that's something that's happening currently, right? Through social media and through the internet, we can communicate with almost anyone in the world. Books from different countries, music, movies, traditions. Yes. So our lives are touched by all of these different connections of, people in different countries through the things they produce, like music, like movies, traveling. Absolutely. So some people are lucky enough to travel to different places in the world. I see lots of people typing. So I'm going to let you continue to type, and I'm going to say some of the things that people have said in other places. Some people have said, well, I teach students from different parts of the world. Or other people have said, I did an exchange. I was an exchange student in another country. Some people say, well, my sister married somebody from Spain, so now I have Spanish nephews and nieces. So we are connected to each other all over the world in various ways to various degrees. But lately, it's been accelerating. We are touched more and more by the global community. Yes, Selena says English is a lingua franca. English is one of the things that connects us. Social networks, Celia says, absolutely. So you may find that you're connected to people that you know face to face, but you mostly interact with them via social media, or you may interact with people you've never met that you've in face to face, but you've met them online, and they are people that are part of your social connections. Foreigners living in our countries, absolutely. When we have people come from other countries and live close to us, we are touched by other places. So whether it's social media or the fact that you care about the environment, or the fact that you follow what's happening by the news, we know now, if we think about our ancestors and historically how long it took people to find out what was going on, today we know in an instant, right? So we're all inevitably connected. So what is the difference between having being touched in your day-to-day by this globalization and actually being a global citizen? What do you think the difference is? So I'm going to go ahead and tell you, that was a rhetorical question. UNESCO has identified 3 domains that are necessary for there to be present for in their definition of a global citizen, okay? And the 3 domains are knowledge, skills, and attitudes. All 3 need to be happening for us to move from having some aspects of global citizenship and being a global citizen. And global citizenship education is about bringing those 3 domains into the classroom and into the activities we do, even outside of the classroom, if we want to develop as global citizens. So before I tell you a little bit more about those 3 domains, I want to give you very quickly a small dose of recent history to give you some context for why should we care about global citizenship today. In 2015, 193 members of the UN, of the General Assembly of the United Nations met and signed on to meet these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So these are shared targets that they want to mobilize governments, NGOs, and individuals around the world in order to meet sustainable development, to reduce poverty, to increase the quality of life all over the world. So you may have heard of these, the Sustainable Development Goals. They also refer to them as SDGs, and I can't remember the term in Spanish right now, but if somebody remembers what the SDGs are called in Spanish, put it in the chat box, please. So of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, there is one in particular that refers to education. It's goal number 4. And the UN has written in goal number 4 what it is we should be striving for in the world in order to give quality education to all of our citizens. Now, within quality education, there's a target that talks about global competence. And the idea is, and let me show you the slide, that by 2030, we should ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills to promote sustainable development, including, among others, global citizenship. So the idea is that education plays a key. We can't get to meet the targets of the SDGs by 2030 unless education and educators get involved, because most of the people that have to be doing this work need to learn about it and need to understand how they play a role in it. And it affects all ages, from little kids to adults. Wherever you are as an educator, it is relevant to you and to students and to citizens around the world. So let's move this along. Okay, so this has gained so much traction, and it has become so important that one of the organisms that looks at how we are educating our students and children around the world is the OECD. So you know that the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has the PISA exam, which is the Program for International Student Assessment. Every 3 years, students around the world at the end of their secondary education take this test. And it's a test not only of the students, but of the educational system. So educators, teachers, school faculty have to fill out the forms and have to fill out an evaluation of how it is that they are, what opportunities are they offering their students in their education. And then children and teenagers take the test. So in 2018, for the first time, they added a new test called Global Competence, where they are measuring how well we are educating secondary level students in global competence, in understanding their global citizenships. And the first results are coming in February of 2020. So we should hear soon how the first test went. But this is just to show how relevant this is and how seriously it's taken around the world. So let's go back and look a little bit more at those domains. By the way, I haven't said it, but if you have questions as we're going, please pop them into the chat box. I don't mind at all. If there's any other way of raising your hand, I'm not sure. Some platforms have that, but just stick in questions in the chat box, or if there's something that wasn't clear, okay? After we get through this little bit, I'm going to give you lots, I hope, of ideas that you can take into your classroom for all kinds of different age groups. So it'll get practical and a little bit more interactive in a second. So the 3 domains that UNESCO has identified are actually the domains of learning that Bloom identified many years ago, and they're very widely recognized. So you may be familiar with them already. So if we think about knowledge, UNESCO has called that cognitive. This is the area where we want to ensure that students acquire the knowledge and the analytical skills to understand issues of global citizenship. So understanding intellectually that we are connected, that we're connected to each other, that we're connected to the environment, that we can problem solve issues together, and how populations, countries all work. That's the intellectual stuff. Then the second point that you see there is the critical thinking skills, the critical analysis skills, the skills to take a problem, take it apart, and find solutions for it. Okay, so cognitive is the intellectual bit. Then attitudes. This is the social emotional part. So it's not enough to just have an intellectual understanding of issues. It's also, and it's not enough to have an intellectual understanding of being a global citizen. It's also important to have to understand on a level of feeling, to feeling the connectedness, to understanding when you see someone else that they also have their own point of view and that they have so many things that are similar to you, but that are also different, to have that emotional understanding of it. So here it's key to develop attitudes of empathy, solidarity, respect, and actual appreciation for differences. And then there's the third domain. This is where we build the skills of acting on it. So you have your intellectual understanding, you have your emotional understanding, and then there is, what do you do to act responsibly? What do you do with this understanding? You have to put it into action in order for it to have an effect. So that's the overall overview of what global citizenship is in the UNESCO framework. They have a whole lot of documentation if you're interested in looking into the detail. But right now, what I'd like to show you is a video that shows you what are global citizens like? What are we aiming for? So let's see if I can do this.
The world is full of global citizens. They're everywhere, like the curious kid who learns that people in other countries don't always have access to clean drinking water and uses her unique skills to come up with an affordable solution to help those people help themselves. Like the farmer who sees that jobs are scarce in his community and connects with other businesses to create new products so that everyone can earn a living. Or education activist Malala Yousafzai, who stood up to injustice where she lives and gave voice to girls everywhere. Our world needs global citizens because they take action to make things better, even just a little. And you can be a global citizen too. Global citizens have to pay attention so that they can understand different cultures and big issues that affect everyone. They feel connected to the world, they are curious, they value differences, and they think about their own actions and thoughts. They also have to be good at stuff. They have to be able to talk to lots of different kinds of people and understand their points of view. They have to adapt to new situations, points of view. Think critically so they can solve big problems. All global citizens have to start off somewhere, whether that's by reaching out to people of different cultures to learn about their lives, volunteering to pick up garbage in their neighborhood, or seeking out information so that they can start to question the world around them. Global citizens come in all shapes and sizes. They can lead international organizations that bring countries together or teach the world about culture through art. So ask yourself, what makes you a global citizen? How do you want to make the world a better place? And what qualities do you have to help get started right now?
Okay, so I saw in the chat that there were a couple of people that had technical issues. Victoria wasn't able to see the video and Selena couldn't hear it. Yes, Celia, now you get the meaning. It goes beyond our own world. It has to do with empathy. Yes. So I'm going to keep on, I think now it's going to become a lot more practical. I wanted to give you some context. So I can send the link. Oh, okay. So I'm getting information that you could hear echo in the video. Huh. All right, I'll try to lower my volume for the next video. I'll do that. Okay, so I will send you the link to the video. I think that maybe Juliana can help us with that. She has the link, and you can find it on YouTube. So, oh, you can't hear me. Oh, this is terrible. Can other people hear me? Or is it just, okay, all right. Okay, I'm sorry, Griselda, I don't know what's going on, but it seems that most people can. All right, so apologies to the people that are experiencing technical issues. Hopefully, hopefully you can resolve them, and maybe Argentina, Macmillan Argentina can help. So I'm going to move on to summarize. If anybody wasn't able to hear the video, I'll send you the link, but the summary is that what are the characteristics of global citizens? Global citizens are everything you see on this slide. Global citizens are open. They are open to the world. They're open to differences, to others, to experiences that are not what they expect and what they already know. Yeah. So if you look on the right, it says curious. Global citizens approach the world with curiosity. They're empathetic. So global citizens recognize that others also have situations that even if they haven't experienced, they can imagine being in their situation. They're self-aware. They know that they have their own point of view and they have their own biases, and that they are not neutral. They come to the world with their history and their way of seeing the world. Global citizens are flexible. They're not rigid. We all have our areas where we're a little bit more rigid, but they develop flexibility, and that allows them to be better collaborators, right? Because they're able to give and take with others. They are engaged. I don't know if you noticed in the video that there were many examples of how global citizens do things. And if you remember the UNESCO domains, there is the third one, which is action, right? So you're engaged, you're active, even if the engagement is, talking to somebody about something, or writing an email, or watching a video. They're engaged, they care, and they do something. They're aware of the similarities and the interdependencies between people, and they feel connected. This is the empathy side of things. They feel connected to others. They are effective communicators. And here, it's not just about being able to, it says there's a problem, I can't listen. I don't know, Juliana, if you can help us with Griselda. After the video, she wasn't able to listen. Let me know if there's something that I need to do on my side. So going on with this slide, they're effective communicators because they understand not only how to talk, and it could be how to speak in a lingua franca such as English, not their first language, but they're also effective in listening and in meeting people halfway. So they're critical thinkers, they're analytical. Here, that's super important because that's what's going to allow problem solving. They appreciate diversity, they're respectful of differences, but also they realize how important differences are and how actually differences enrich them. And at the bottom, you have that they're effective at resolving conflict. All of these characteristics make them effective at collaborating, at working together towards common goals. So that's what we're looking for. That's our goal. We want to be all of this. We want our students to be all of this. So how do we get there? How can we implement, how can we teach global citizenship in our classrooms? So from now, I'm going to focus on giving you examples and ideas, and I welcome your comments as well. Okay, so Griselda, Juliana is going to suggest that you come out and come back in, and that hopefully will solve your video problems. So I'm going to give you examples of things we already do in the classroom, and then I'm going to suggest how you can add something, tweak something, bring another layer of something into the classroom to help you include global citizenship education. So one of the things we do a lot in our English teaching classrooms is read texts, right? It's one of the inputs. We have reading comprehension, we have literacy, we have all kinds of ways of bringing in texts. So, so another person can't listen, Stella. Hopefully Juliana will let them know, but I'll just type the message. People who can't hear me, please exit and enter the room again. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little activity with you here. I'm going to read you a poem. But as I read the poem, I'm not going to show you the images that come with it yet. I want you to imagine what images come to mind, okay, as I read it. So, the clouds are gray. The tall trees sway. A storm is near. The storm is here. I want to run away. My home is warm. My home is dry. My home is safe. So be thinking about what images come to mind. Somebody saying fear, homesick. Think also of what visuals come to mind. Yeah, what are you imagining? The strong wind roars, the cold rain pours. I want to hide. I go inside. I shut and lock the door. My home is warm. My home is dry. My home is safe. Thunder goes boom. Light fills the room. I feel no fear. I'm safe in here. I hide in my bedroom. My home is warm. My home is dry. My home is safe. Now it's time to sleep. I can count some sheep. The storm is there, but I don't care. Soon I am asleep. Good night, Mom. Good night, Dad. Good night, Storm. So, some of the things that people are putting in the chat. The storm is not helping, but I can follow you. Fear, coziness, to awaken empathy in our students' hearts. Emotions are not culturally bound. Security, universal feelings, family. A gray day, a warm drink, family. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the images that accompany this poem. Yes, you probably have some images in your head of what home looks like, of what storm looks like, what safety looks like. So let's see what these images show. So I'll give you a second to look. There are 2 pages. So is there anything unexpected in these images? Is there anything different from what you had imagined? So these images, I'm going to keep on going, but please continue to participate. It's excellent to see what you guys are thinking. So these images, so this comes from one of the books that we've created at Macmillan, and the images that we put there, we chose deliberately to represent a variety of cultures. So in this case, this is a representation of a family in Africa, and you might have been surprised by that. That might not be the typical thing you would see in an ELT book. You might have also been surprised that the father's cooking. So we're representing gender roles in a non-stereotypical way. And we're also representing how a girl might see her world. And we're making a different point of view of what a family might look like, what their games might look like, what their home might look like, etc. Somebody imagine London. Okay, so this is just to show you that what you show with the text when you're reading text in the classroom is important, and that you can make a choice for what things you show. Now, I'd like to drive the point home further with a question that I'd like to ask you. What do people think of when you say that you live in Argentina or that you are from Argentina? And this is just an example, but if you're from Peru, or if you're from Puerto Rico, or from any other country that's not Argentina, ask yourself the same question. What do people think of when you say that you live or that you are from the place that you are from or where you live? Messi, Maradona, asado, football, asado, tango, good food, ceviche, tango, ceviche, hot weather, empanadas, mate. Okay, all right. So foreigners think of football, right? So the question is, El Papa, the question is, what do people think of? Not what do you know about your country, but what do people think of? And this is what I thought most people think of when you say Argentina. And I think in a way we're aligned, because you said Messi and Maradona and soccer, right? You said football, soccer. And some people did say tango. So what I'd like to show you here is it true that in Argentina, soccer is important, and that you have superstar soccer players? Is this true? Is it true that that tango is an important part of the Argentinian culture? Probably people would say, yes, these are true things. But is that the full story about Argentina? Is that all there is to know about Argentina? If I know that Argentina has great soccer players and that tango is a big deal, am I done? Nothing more to know about Argentina? No. Natalia says no. And I've put here a reference to Chimamanda Adichie. She's one of my favorite authors. She's from Nigeria. She has an excellent, I highly recommend, a TED Talk called The Danger of a Single Story. And basically what she says is that when you just hear one thing about a country or about people or about a group of people, then it becomes a stereotype and it's a single story. She calls it a single story. So when I gave this talk to your colleagues in Brazil, and I asked them, they said everybody says, what do you think? Soccer and Carnaval, Brazil. Is that the full story about Brazil? No. Would they like people to know other things about Brazil? Yes. So when you only represent culture in one way, you end up building a stereotype. And that means that people don't look beyond the stereotype. And it becomes a flat image of these people. You don't see them as full people like yourself. You only see one side of them. So, I think you've already answered this question. What would you like people to know about Argentina? You've answered many other things. And I'm sure there are many other things that you haven't put in the chat that you would like them to know. So what I'm trying to get at is that when we are teaching in the classroom, if we are aware that it's important to show different sides of the story about everything and about all people, then we can make an effort to bring that in and not just support and continue to build the single story, which is the stereotype, which makes it very difficult to see what we share and what we have in common. So bringing this back to my initial idea, read texts, yes, but read texts that represent many points of view. That's how you bring in global citizenship education into the classroom. Bring texts that represent people in more than one way, gender in more than one way, other cultures in more than one way. Expose people to multiple stories. Expose them to more than the stereotype. Why? Because global citizens know about other cultures. They recognize our common humanity. For that to be possible for your students, they have to see more than the stereotype. They have to see how we are all so similar. So let's go on to another idea. How can we teach global citizenship? Now, we've already said read text, so bring in different kinds of texts, bring in different stories. Now, once you have a text, we need to think critically about it, right? This is something we already do in the classroom. I'm going to show you a text that's from a book, from a level 1 book, and it's about, this is a unit, it's an ELT book, it's a unit about homes. So in this is a nonfiction text. It's a text that teaches you about different ways of building homes, different elements that you use to build homes. So it's called Old and New. Around the world, homes have many different shapes. Some homes are traditional, they are made in an old way. Some homes are modern, they are new. This is a traditional home in India. It's made from mud. Now I've blocked a piece of the text out, and then I'll show you what's there. This is a modern kitchen. It's a home in Iceland. This traditional home is called a yurt. It's in Mongolia. It has one round room. There's cloth on the walls and wood on the floors. They're different, but they're always home. So I've just told you about different homes in various places. What did you learn about Mongolia and India? What do you now know about homes in Mongolia and India? So I see that people are typing in, but I can just go back and show you. In Mongolia, we taught you about a yurt, and it's out in the middle of the countryside, right? And when we looked at India, I showed you a mud house. So probably I'm reinforcing the idea that in India and in Mongolia, homes are not as advanced to other homes. They're similar to cottages. These are things that are coming up in the chat. Yes, correct. Now I'm going to show you the text as it really appears in this book. So you have some homes are traditional, some are modern. This is a traditional home in India. It's made from mud. Now right below it, this modern apartment is in India too. It's made from concrete. This is the living room. That's what I had covered. And here, these are traditional homes in Iceland. They always have grass on the roof. This is a modern kitchen. It's a home in Iceland too. This modern building is in Mongolia. It's made from steel and glass. This traditional home is called a yurt, etc. So now what have you learned about Mongolia? Yes, they have a traditional home. It's round, it's made of cloth, it's a simple, it's interesting, it's pretty cool, but it's a simple cottage-like home in the countryside. They also have modern buildings in cities. Okay, so if I'm in a city sitting in Buenos Aires or in Lima or in Mexico City or wherever in the world I may be, and I see this modern building, now I'm making connections and I say, oh, so I never been to Mongolia, but I can see it's similar to my country. There's a variety of experiences, right? Same with Iceland. Iceland's not just modern. Iceland also has traditional. India is not just traditional or poor. India also has modern, also has buildings, etc. So this is answering the question. If you see a text like the first text that had the covered images, if your text does not include a modern version of Mongolia, say, you can ask your students, what is missing? How was Mongolia represented? And what was missing in that picture? And you can have them do the research. You can have students do go on Google and find out what are Mongolia cities like. So the simple question we need to ask is, whose point of view is missing? How is the world represented? And this is a way to think critically about texts and analyze them in a way that we bring in global citizenship. We're looking for various points of view. And we don't stop when we think students have the right answer, because they may identify a point of view that is missing that we didn't as teachers. So global citizens, remember when we saw the video and I said characteristics? Global citizens are analytical. They're critical thinkers, and we need to teach them how to be critical thinkers. One of the key questions is to ask, what is not represented? What choice was made in this text to represent, and what choice was left out? What representation was left out? There's always representations left out. You have to. You can't include everything in every page of anything you do. So let's analyze critically what choice was made and what could we bring to this. Yeah? Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Another way we can teach global citizenship, we have classroom discussions. We have them all the time, right? So how do we need to modify that to make sure we bring in global citizenship education? So this is an idea. If you were doing a unit on home in your classroom, you might do a little discussion like this, right? What do you prefer, a traditional or a modern home? I'm going to divide you into pairs. I'm acting like the teacher. Student A, you're going to give 3 reasons. Student B, you're going to listen, right? Is this something that you would do in your classroom? I'm assuming that some people are going to say yes. Sure, okay. Now I want you to think for a second. If you are teaching in our discussions for global citizenship, it is key that we learn how to listen. Being an open-minded listener, a listener who listens without judgment and with curiosity, is a key to being able to problem solve and work together. So what does speaker B? Speaker A is practicing, is practicing the grammar and the vocabulary that we taught them. Speaker A is practicing all of the stuff that we've been learning in the lesson. But I want to make sure that we're also practicing listening skills and to get speaker B to learn to be a good listener. So I'm going to suggest that you ask speaker B to listen in order to learn. I don't want speaker B to listen only to wait for his turn so they can be speaker A, because sometimes you know that you're speaker B and you're thinking, okay, what do I prefer? And what am I going to say? No, speaker B is going to listen in order to learn about speaker A and to understand speaker A. And one of the ways you can get speaker B to do this is something that is a visible thinking routine. And it's called, what makes you say that? It's a simple question. And it's a question that is neutral and that doesn't carry judgment. So It's a question that gets more information from the speaker and that uncovers why it is they've said whatever they've said. So when I've done this webinar, but when I've made it in person, I actually have people do this activity and I make people practice. Speaker B, you're going to listen to learn. You're going to ask at least once, what makes you say that? And although it's a little bit awkward the first time, because you're not used to asking that question, it becomes a habit. If you model this in your classroom and you ask your students, instead of assuming you know where they're coming from, you ask them, oh, okay, thank you for that. Now, can you tell us what makes you say that? Or if they share something, that's interesting, what makes you say that? You show that you are interested, you want to hear more, and you allow them to tell you where they're coming from. Now, another thing that you can do is ensure that Speaker B tells Speaker A at the end what they understood and asks them, did I get that right? And Speaker A can correct them and say, no, that wasn't what I meant. So you can model what it is to listen with empathy, with openness, with curiosity, and without judgment, and make sure they build those skills in addition to all of the language skills they're practicing in this conversation. Okay, so going back to the summary, how can we teach global citizenship with discussions? We ask them to participate in discussions where they also learn to listen. Other ideas, we set classroom rules that foster respectful communication. And this is important for all age groups, not just children. We have them practice turn taking. Even adults love to dominate a conversation, right? When they're super interested, they really want to say what they want to say. So we need to give them limits so that they practice. Now it's Speaker A who's talking and Speaker B has this other role. Teach active listening, which was the example we were talking about. And then what I was saying, model curiosity, show them, you have to do it as well. Show them what it's like to want to know more about why people say what they say. Why? Because global citizens are empathetic and effective communicators. And that's what we're teaching them to do there. So I've got a couple more examples before we get to the end. So projects. Lots of people, you do projects in their classrooms. If you're lucky, if you have the time, if students have the time, you get to do projects. So how do we do projects to embed global citizenship? In this talk, I've been using the example of home, of using a unit where you're talking about home. This is an example project that you might have in a book or that you might come up with on your own, that you might have your students do. I don't know if people have heard about tiny houses, but these are miniature houses that you get very minimalistic and you have just the minimum that you need. You can tie them to your car and take them places. It's kind of a fun project to think of. What would you do if you designed your tiny house? So in this project, you have location, come up with where it's going to be, make it fun, practical, and eco-friendly. What materials are you going to use? So how could we take this project and make it more, get this project to help us to develop global citizenship in the classroom? Ideas that we could do is ensure that you take a project and you make it local. So you could take that same one and you could say, build a tiny house or design a tiny house so that it works in your local environment. What are local issues that you would have to contend with? But you could take it a step further and you can have your students identify what are local problems to solve within this topic, depending on whether you're working with teenagers, adults, or primary students, or even pre-primary students. No matter what the age, students can identify problems that they feel. If with any unit, whether it's family, home, whatever unit you're doing, there is always a problem that your students can identify and that you can set them up to start thinking about what would they do about it, right? And what does this do? The first bullet point there, teach them that they can make a difference. It doesn't have to start local. Now with social media, you can make a difference far away, but it makes it much more tangible if you start local. Encourage students to think about their impact on the environment, and that way you will find many local problems to deal with. Set up collaboration so that there is individual accountability, so that each student needs to produce an element of the project needs to come together to do something about the project, and they're accountable for that part of it. It also gives them a little bit of independence so that they're collaborating, but they're not only dependent on each other. Support conflict resolution when conflict arises, not if, but when. And try not to avoid conflict. The idea is we're building these skills, right? So how are we teaching global citizenship with projects? We're doing projects that give students opportunities to collaborate, gives them opportunities to find local problems to solve, because local citizens are good collaborators and they take care of their environment. They're aware of their environment and they take care of it. So we're close to the end. I'm going to touch on something that usually students love, and sometimes teachers leave to the end or to a Friday because it's loved. Videos. We like to bring in videos into the classroom, right? Students become alive with them. So what can you do with videos to bring in global citizenship? I'm going to play a video right now, and I want you to think about, so the video is going to talk about girls and about boys. And I want you to think about your feelings and your preconceived ideas about what girls can do and what boys can do. Okay? Here we go. And if for whatever reason you have technical issues, there is a YouTube link that I will send that Juliana has already, so you can get it.
The world is full of global citizens. They are everywhere, like the curious kid who learns that people in other countries don't always have access to clean drinking water, and uses her unique skills to come up with an affordable solution to help those people help themselves.
Hi, Erin. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
Hair.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
Was everybody able to see that video and hear it? Okay, I see an oh wow. Okay. So yeah, awesome. I agree. Every time I watch the video, I get teary-eyed. So what are most people, if you ask them if they have a bias and they think that girls cannot do things that boys can do, they would say no. And yet, in our day-to-day lives, we sometimes act like it. So imagine everything that could come up in a classroom discussion about this. And the key for me here is not that everybody agree or that everybody have my opinion, if I were teaching this, but it's giving students an opportunity to identify their own biases, giving them an opportunity to think about what are my beliefs and where do they come from and how might they grow? Goosebumps, I agree, yes. So bring videos into the classroom and have students reflect on them. Find opportunities to have them unpack stereotypes. Where do the stereotypes come from? I think girls and boys would be able to do amazing things discussing this video. Of course, teenagers and adults as well, anybody really. Support students in understanding their own biases. It is part of the human brain. It's built to have biases. It's how we make quick decisions. We have to have them, but that doesn't mean we should be blind to them. We need to know which ones they are and deal with them. And when they're not appropriate, grow from there. So think about how others see them. All of these are things that you can do in the classroom when you're discussing videos. Global citizens are self-aware, and they're curious about themselves too, not just curious about others. And they know that they don't know everything about themselves. They can always learn more. And this will help them to appreciate diversity, because once you realize the vulnerability in not being perfect and not being neutral, then you realize we're all in it together, and we all come to it with these vulnerabilities. Okay, so I've got one more idea to share with you, and that is making connections to students' lives. We always do this. We're always finding moments in our classrooms to personalize and to ask a student, what is this true for you? How do you do this? So here is an example of one of our books. And this one in particular, actually, we did include global citizenship in it. And even though it's in most of that book, it's got this particular page in every unit that deals head on with global citizenship. But what I want to add, you can add to any book that you're using, yes? So imagine that you're doing this vocabulary lesson. You, in this case, on the left, you see, listen to Marie and Louis in the morning. What day is it? So this is a lesson on daily routines, and they're learning brush your teeth, get up, wash your face, all of that good stuff. So they listen to a girl talking about her daily routine, and she and her brother live in France. So they have a routine that's appropriate for their life in France. And then on the right side of the page, you listen to Sita and Daksa, a girl from India and a boy from Indonesia, and they talk about their morning routine. So they're practicing all of these routine words, but they're also telling you about their life in these different parts of the world, and they're pretty different. And they eat different things, and they get up at different times, and they're things that the first time you hear them, you might think, oh, that's strange. They eat fish for breakfast? I'm making that one up, but some people eat fish for breakfast. Some people think it's strange to drink milk for breakfast. So in this case, they've learned this information, but the question that I want to get to is, do we all have the same daily routines? So here at the top, so that's an awareness building question. And then at the bottom, the personalization that I was suggesting, is your daily routine the same? So here children are going to notice differences because all three were different. So of course, the children's zone, whether they're in Peru or in Buenos Aires or in Patagonia, they're going to have difference with some of them. And then the last question, why? Why are daily routines different around the world? So you're building in that knowledge about cultures, but also critical thinking, and then curiosity. And hopefully all of that is going to help you build empathy, because they're going to realize that when the sun comes up and where you live and what kind of environment is around you has a big influence on what your daily routine is. So that's how you build in global citizenship, in those moments of personalization, making connections to students' lives and the world. Start with what students know. In this case, they know about their daily routine. If you had a book that just had daily routines in a neutral place that doesn't really give you about a specific culture, you could bring that in. You could have them find out, what is it like in other places? Or maybe this topic isn't the easiest to bring in, but this kind of approach, you can apply it to another situation. Start with what students know, include questions where they build self-awareness so that they don't assume that what they know is normal and neutral, it's just what they know, and then expose them to differences. Bring in differences from other places, other people. It could be people around them. It doesn't even have to be another country. And then give them an opportunity to find similarities. That's where you find common humanity. That's where you know you're connected. Global citizens understand we're all connected to each other. So hopefully with all of these ideas, I've convinced you that global citizenship education brings together all these different areas of development, but adds wider meaning, adds wider purpose to everybody involved. It's enriching and it's satisfying to be a part of it. Now, how do we know this is relevant in the real world? If I haven't convinced you yet, which I hope I have, do you think that this is something that when students leave the classroom, it's going to help them in their daily lives? If you look around us and you think about the issues we have as communities and as a global community, the problems that are out there and the opportunities that are out there, they're all connected. The problems are big problems where we need to collaborate across countries, across cultures to solve them. And the opportunities are globalized, they're connected. There's so many opportunities, but they do require these skills. So this is just one example of how an employer is actually asking for a global mindset. So some of you may be aware, may know Airbnb, an alternative to hotels. One of the things they look for is approach all your work with a global mindset. Advocate for designs and language that internationalize well, and work with our translations team to improve quality. Of course, you need to have all these other things that are particular to the job, but approach your world with a global mindset, your work with a global mindset. How could you advocate for designs and language that internationalize well if you don't know about other cultures? And if you haven't tried to communicate and collaborate across cultures? And if you haven't thought about what it is to have another person's point of view? All of these skills that we've been talking about in this talk are necessary in order to have a global mindset. So I'll leave you with a couple of quotes. It is personal. That's what education does. It makes the world personal. And one of my favorites, education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. And hopefully today I've lit your fire to be interested and curious about global citizenship education and to want to make it a part of your life. Thank you for the time you've given me. I really appreciate it. I wish I could meet you in person, but for now, hopefully this has been something that you've enjoyed.